Hey, healthy humans. I want to do a little follow up on an episode a short episode I did a few weeks ago on posture. And I am a stickler for posture. I always have been since I was about the age of 10 when I started developing. My mom was a stickler on me, but I do want to say something. And I only realized this in the last couple of weeks. Good posture when we're sitting on hard chairs, like a chair that's a wooden chair, or even like this chair that has, it has some cushion, but it's not super cushiony. But if we do spend a lot of time sitting down, so if we're working at a desk, or even if I'm sitting down at a chair for more than 20 minutes or so, I ended up hurting my tailbone. And the pain that comes from the tailbone injury, whether normally it happens with a fall. I had a really bad fall when I was in college. I slipped backwards on some ice. I fell down hard, hit the tailbone, probably broke it at that time. I was in a lot of pain, but at the time, I was like 21 and you just kind of keep moving along. Well, it hasn't bothered me up until the last 3 weeks. And I think it was because I did this episode on posture. So I am supposed to say something about this. When it comes to our posture, there is a time when good posture is not going to be great for us. And that would be if you spend a long time sitting down on a hard wooden chair and we have really good posture and not very defined glutes. Now, I have had pretty good glutes ever since I was in my 20s when I started practicing a lot of yoga and working out. Well, over the last little bit, I haven't been working out as much, and my glutes have gotten deflated, is probably the nicest way to say it. So, when that happens, if we don't have the padding of really strong gluteal muscles, they give it some padding to be able to, so when you're sitting down, your glutes naturally provide you this padding. Well, if we don't exercise very much, or if we're not doing squats, I'll show you some exercises to develop the glutes. But if we're not doing those, what happens is those muscles become really weak and we don't have enough padding. So if we're sitting up really straight and we have this great posture, I'll show you without this cushion. I ended up getting a cushion. A cushion for just for this because I was in so much pain and I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. I didn't fall, but it was a re-injuring of this injury that I had had 30 years ago. Okay. So when we're sitting down naturally and we have really good posture, now the tailbone comes down, our spine goes down like this, and the tailbone for most people kind of goes in just a little bit. For some people, as a yoga teacher, I've noticed some people do have a tailbone that will slightly turn out, and that makes some yoga poses more challenging. So depending on the shape of your tailbone, so if you ever sit down and you kind of lean back and you take your feet up like that, and if you feel some pokiness, discomfort, might have a tailbone that goes out. It's really easy to kind of compress too much onto the coccyx down here. So here, when I say sit up really tall, we want the ears over the shoulders and the shoulders over the hips. The belly should be in, and we keep the natural curve of the pelvis. So if I'm sitting like this, it's called a posterior tilt. If you remember that from the video, I'll put a link in here if you missed it. If I'm sitting like this, it's an anterior tilt. The bowl of my pelvis will tip forward. When we're sitting with good posture, we want something right in the middle. We call that a neutral pelvis. But if I'm sitting here, let's say I'm at the computer, I'm just listening to someone talking, or you're just hanging out, and I sit up here for a long time on a hard chair, the pressure is going to go down and it can bruise the coccyx because if we don't have these muscles here to give us enough padding to cushion it, then that's going to be pressure against pressure. Everything is going down onto the hardwood. So what I ended up doing, well, let me show you. If you have this, if this seated for a long period of time, this would be the one time if you have a bruised tailbone and you don't have a pillow, definitely put something on the chair. You don't want to sit on a hard chair, okay? Because that's just going to make everything worse. And you'll go, how do I know if I have a bruised tailbone? Well, if you have a bruised tailbone, if when you stand up, you get to about here and you go, oh, I really don't feel like I can go any farther, that could be a bruised tailbone. What we want to, because the motion kind of stops right here. Now, what I've also noticed is that it comes when the hamstrings, which are the back of the legs right here, are tight. So if we don't stretch the hamstrings daily, and daily, the hamstrings get tight, and that kind of leads to a pulling on the pelvis. So I did get a cushion. This is just one I got off Amazon, and I'm going to tell you, I've had it for 2 days now, and it's a godsend. It has made the biggest difference. I'm going to carry this with me in the car. It's going to go with me when I have to go and sit in people's homes. It's going to go when I have to sit on the floor. I mean, it's to the point that I spend a lot of time seated on the floor, and I've had to be kneeling on the floor because I couldn't put my tail on anything. So when you sit down here, it gives a whole lot of padding and comfort. It's kind of like a memory foam pillow or something like that. And it feels really great. Now, what it also does is it gives us a really nice position. It automatically puts your pelvis into that neutral position, which allows the spine to elongate, and it makes it so much easier to sit up, which then when we're sitting up really tall, it also makes it so much easier to breathe. We're able to breathe fully when we have good posture, and the breath is the essence of life, right? Breath and water, the essence of life. We could not live without those things. So we want to make sure that we continue to breathe. And if you don't feel like you're breathing really well, we're going to do some segments on breath work and how to learn to breathe. We think, oh, we should all know how to do it, but most of us don't. And as we get older, those muscles also start to atrophy. The intercostals, all of the muscles that help us support our breathing start to get a little weaker and shorter, and that's going to affect our breathing. So, okay, so tailbone, this would be the one time if you don't have something soft to sit on, it would be the one time that I would say go ahead and have the bad posture. Now, we don't want this for a long period of time. We wouldn't want to sit like this. It's not going to feel good. Our head will come forward. And of course, for every inch our head comes forward, we're adding about 10 pounds of misalignment on the cervical spine. And that's going to give us all kinds of problems. Make sure you check out the other episode on posture for that. Now, to strengthen the glutes, simple things like squats, you don't need fancy equipment. You don't need a whole lot. You can stand at the back of your chair, take two hands to the back of the chair, have your feet about shoulder distance apart, and try to keep your feet, you can't see my feet, but try to keep them parallel or only slightly turned out. We don't want them to be really far turned out. If you're in a bar class, they'll probably take them really wide. You can do some second position squats, but those are going to tighten up the gluteus medius right here. So you might not even want that, but try to keep them relatively parallel or slightly turned out. Make sure that your weight goes into your heels when we do squats. So I'm not going to be, it's not like I'm leaning back. I'm trying to keep my torso, you see, kind of upright, but my butt will be going backwards. Now the torso is going to come forward just a bit. It will go forward, but I'm not leaning forward. It's not like I'm bending over to pick something up, right? We don't want to do that. We practice lowering down here. We're making sure that our knees track in line with the second toes. We don't want the knees to buckle together because that's not going to be good for our knees. That'll put a lot of undue pressure on the knees. So think kneecaps in line with your second toes as your butt goes back. Try to keep the shoulders back and still keep your ears in line with the shoulders. We only go to about 90 degrees or so and then come up. I like to give the booty a little bit of a squeeze when I come up. It also helps to stretch the hip flexors, which are right in here. Okay, so again, it's a lowering down. That's a really good one to develop glutes and come up, give a little squeeze. You could start with 10, then do 20, then do 20, take a little rest, then do 20 more, do a little rest. Now you can do a lot of squats. Squats are great. You can do them all day long. You can be like, I need a coffee break, and instead of the coffee, you just go ahead and do some squats. Other good ones, still holding on to the chair, take one leg back and raise it up. It doesn't need to come up very high, but what we don't want is to arch, not arching. Draw your ribs toward your hips and bend your knee. So now when I bend my knee, this is going to engage the hamstrings a bit, and you lift, hold. I like to hold it just for a bit. Often we kind of go like this. It's just way too fast. Even though there's not any weight, you could always add weight, but even though without any weight, just go nice and slow. You'll feel the glutes engage. If you put your hand right here and you feel them engaging, then you're like, okay, they're working. That's great. Wonderful. So again, do the same thing. It doesn't need to be a lot, right? You can do this when you're doing the dishes. You can do this as your kids are taking a bath. It doesn't It doesn't take a gym membership or anything super fancy for us to be working our bodies and using them all the time. I want everything to be as simple and easy as it could possibly be, just to make sure that we're doing it. Now, for working the glutes, we want strong glutes, but at the same time, we want to lengthen our hamstrings, because if our hamstrings are really tight, it pulls um, the whole bowl of the pelvis backwards like that. So one of my favorites is a down dog stretch on the back of a chair or the back of your desk or holding on to something. What's important when we do a down dog stretch is that you allow your spine to get really long. Start with your knees bent. And again, I'm making sure that my knees are tracking in line with the second toes. I don't want my knees to turn out or for the knees to turn in. Keep your hands about shoulder distance apart and then play around with just sinking down. So if I sink down like this, I go, okay, and we might start off right here, but I want you to go, can I elongate even more? The more you do it, you'll be able to step farther and farther away and then play around. Once the spine is long, you play around with starting to straighten the legs. They don't need to be straight, but you'll feel them. Play around with starting to straighten them. Try to hold it for about 30 seconds, then a minute, then you can come up and you can do it again. But you'll feel your hamstrings start to lengthen and the whole body will start to feel much better. So once we're here, I don't want my ears up over the shoulders. Draw them down and away from the shoulders. If you can, roll your elbows down toward the ground and breathe. I'm talking pretty quickly just because I was trying to make it short and fast. But you don't get so excited. So we're just, right, we're going to slow down our breath. Inhale, breathe in and exhale out. Inhale, breathe in and exhale out. Now, when you're down here, you might even look down at your feet. If your heels come closer together than your toes, almost, I'm not really moving my feet, but I'm almost starting to isometrically reach my heels out and away from each other. Breathe in and breathe out. And then come all the way back up. And then that was your coffee break. And you make your way right back on over to your comfy your comfy chair, booty supporter. And all right, so there you go. So the one time that posture, throw it out the window if you are sitting on a wooden chair. So this pillow is going to be my BFF for the next, well, 4 to 12 weeks. But I will say, just in a couple of days, it's made a huge difference for how my tailbone feels. If you have tailbone pain, use a little ice, use a little heat. I've been using an infrared, like a red infrared heating pad, and that seems to be helping quite a bit too, and doing Kegels as well. Okay, so that's an update. I just didn't want to give everyone this posture thing and say it's so wonderful, and then have someone sitting on a hard chair and saying, "Oh, Melissa, you broke my butt," because it really is a pain in the butt, and I want to make sure that we're all feeling as good, healthy, and strong as we possibly can be for as long as we possibly can. All right, love and light. I'll see you next time.